Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
In this edition of Global Print, I will talk to you about External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar's dismissive comments about international organizations like Freedom House, which have downgraded India's status from free to partly free, and how Mr. Jaishankar has not just accused them of not understanding India, but also of hypocrisy. And my argument in turn, which is that the Narendra Modi government, of which Mr. Jaishankar is a very important part, is saying all this with the China model in mind. But before that, dear viewer, I'd like to make an appeal to you. Please do subscribe and pay just a little bit for the Print's free, fair, transparent, and unhyphenated journalism. You know that we have been bringing to you the best news stories, the best videos over the last year of the pandemic and even before. So please do continue to support us. You will find the subscription links for an international as well as for a domestic audience in the description of this video. So back to my column Global Print, in which I talk about how Mr. Jaishankar sees the world. In fact, how the Narendra Modi government sees the world. And over the weekend at the India Today conclave, he was asked, that is, Mr. Jaishankar was asked a question about how India has been getting touchy or seems to have a thin skin about criticism from abroad. And I quote, this is what the External Affairs Minister said in response. So he said, you use the dichotomy of democracy and autocracy. You want the truthful answer, it is hypocrisy. Because you have a set of self-appointed custodians of the world who find it very difficult to stomach that somebody in India is not looking for their approval. Now, those are harsh words, especially when you see that India is actually engaging with the rest of the world. And the primary example of that is the Quad Summit meeting, which took place just a few days ago, in which the US President Joe Biden, the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, the Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi were all on one screen. They talked to each other. Mr. Modi said at that summit meeting that it's wonderful to be among friends. So on the one hand, you have this engagement with the world, and on the other, you have comments like the ones that Mr. Jaishankar made, where he said that India is going to define itself not according to somebody else's image, but according to its own. Now, that's all very well, and here are the 2 points that I make in my column. The first is that India is doing this, that Prime Minister Modi is leading from the front because he has the China model in mind. Now, what do I mean by that? The fact is that China, although it is still a developing country because of its 1.4 billion population, and if you look at it with per capita nominal terms of the GDP, it is still not on par with key nations in the West, whether it's the US or several countries in the European Union. But it is going to become the world's most powerful economic power by 2028 when it overtakes the US. And one of the reasons for that is that it has handled its COVID pandemic much better than the US. Now, the Chinese have understood that strength begets economic strength. So they are on the way to becoming the most powerful economic player. They have, as the Communist Party of China and Xi Jinping as its leader, has decided they will control the media narrative, not just domestically, but across the world, which means that they have shut down BBC News. Facebook, Google, big social media engines like that are not allowed entry into China. China has its own alternatives, whether it's Weibo or Baidu. And look at what India is doing. India is also producing its own Twitter alternative, which is cool. So that's, on the one hand, when you look at the global narrative or the media narrative or the global image that India wants to reshape or redefine. On the other, India is also taking a leaf out of China's book, and here I will point to you the fact that External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, when he was a diplomat, has also been an ambassador to China. He was a very successful ambassador, actually. So the Indian government or the Modi government is taking a leaf out of China's book by understanding that if you are economically strong, then the world will forgive you. And proof of that is the agreement between the European Union and the Chinese, a trade and investment deal that was signed on New Year's Eve, which opens up the European Union to China. The signals from that was that the European Union is planning to go back and invest in China, wants to continue trade with China, but despite the fact that the Chinese did not share its COVID-19 virus information with the WHO, the European Union has continued to sign this deal with China. And that's because the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, who was at the head of the EU presidency last December when the deal was signed, understands that German automakers make very good business in China and that they depend a lot on their own profits on the Chinese market. So this is an example that India is now replicating. So despite the fact that Chinese troops and Indian troops have been engaging in a face-off in Ladakh for the past 9 or 10 months, of course, this engagement is taking place in the Ladakh sector, although the Chinese troops continue to occupy Indian territory in other sectors, whether it's in the hot springs or Gogra or even in the Depsang plains. But the Indian government have decided that it will open up its economy. Now, which country in the world has spare cash today? And the answer, and the one very clear and simple answer to that, is China. Remember, you still have Chinese troops on Indian territory in the Ladakh area. But if the Indian government is going to open up, and several proposals are in the pipeline, several Chinese proposals, including those of Chinese automakers who want to make in India. So this is a lesson that the Narendra Modi government has learned, which is invite Chinese FDI into the country, separate that from the strategic issues, the defense issues that we have with the Chinese, for example, in Ladakh on the line of actual control. So remember, this is the model in front of India, which is that it doesn't matter which country wants to manufacture inside India or make in India, as long as it brings FDI into the country. Now, this is reminiscent of what Deng Xiaoping, the big Chinese leader, when he opened up the economy in 1979, said, and very famously said, it's a very famous phrase, where he said, it doesn't matter what color the cat is as long as it catches mice. So, in a sense, the Modi government, Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, taking a leaf out of that China book, which is that if you're economically strong, then the world may say things to you behind your back, but they will continue to deal with you. So the lesson is that strength begets strength. And Freedom House type of reports downgrading India, or the VDEM Institute in Sweden also being very critical of India's democratic status, can be damned. That you can ignore those reports as long as you're economically strong. This China model is what the Narendra Modi government believes in, and this is what I argue in my column Global Print it is emulating. So do read my column and let me know what you think of this video. This is Jyoti Malhotra. Thanks for watching.